I'm Seamless, and today is another how to synth tutorial, and I'm making sure, yes, good. And today I'm going to show you how to make this sound. And this sound. And this sound. And this sound. Not that sound. That sound. So last time we talked about doing the snare, and then I showed you the toms that I had at that point, and these are not those toms. These are new toms. Not only are they new toms, but they are in one Sytrus and entirely without post-processing. Like, these guys aren't doing anything. And so not only are they in one Sytrus, but there's a certain amount of multi-sampled kind of feel to it. The fact that not every sound sounds the same. Every hit, that is. You can even see the harmonics kind of moving around a bit. You know, to a certain degree. I actually have Superior Drummer open here because I wanted to show you something. These toms are not perfect. They're not super great, but they do have a basis in reality. As it turns out, what they sound like, they're very dead, not very full of tone, very kind of flat sound. It's exactly what it sounds like when you take off the bottom head of a tom and stick a mic up inside it. Which I think is funny. I did kind of impose upon myself a little bit of a limitation in keeping all of this inside one Sytrus. However, I probably could have optimized this to not use as many oscillators as I did to do what I did to have what happened. Because essentially what these are, these toms are all based on the same thing. They're all the same, more or less, configuration. It's just that there are different pitches involved to make them be different pitches. Essentially, there's two parts. There's this thing, pretty straightforward, and then there's this thing. That thing is also pretty straightforward, but there are a couple of things to kind of keep in mind. First off, is that the most of the tone that we're getting right now is from reverb. That's what it sounds like without reverb. That's what it sounds like with reverb. It goes back to what I said in the snare video with the idea about when you're doing physical modeling, which essentially this is, that we're trying to create synthetically a realistic sounding sound, that the realism, the realness of it usually comes from the environment that it was recorded in, the room sound, that kind of thing. And reverb does a pretty good job of allowing you to mimic that. Now, making the click, I had a very specific study for this. I was using this tom. And I was looking at the harmonics as they're presented. We had, you know, the part that's moving down, and that whole thing. I actually had I thought about how I could do some of the ambience built in there. Although that would bring me back to the fact that I probably require more than one Sytrus to do to make it feel really real. But considering the snare had 4 Sytruses, I'm sure that's not really a big deal. Yeah, so you can kind of just see where the harmonics are present. So my thought in the matter was to kind of just utilize FM to sort of create harmonics in that position, and then just kind of have a volume automation on it. And the volume automation is a very, very important, which you might be thinking, well, but any amount of and these are all hertz values instead of opposed to ratio values. So just kind of making frequencies and then FMing them at certain levels and amounts to kind of move harmonics to be in that position, and then to shut them off really, really fast. Because if you don't shut them off, this is what you get. That's what the click sounds like. Without the click nature of the envelope. And the other thing about the envelope is that it needs to terminate fast enough that you don't hear an oscillation. Some of those frequencies might be oscillating, but as you see, as I engage it a bit, open it up a little bit, you can start to hear actually like the full sound oscillating back and forth enough times that you can actually try to determine a tone. In this case, I have broken this up into 2 different clicks. I have number 2 and number 4. Number 2 is a kind of a low tuned, and number 4 is a bit higher tuned. And they exist to kind of fit the position, area. Now, I didn't really spend a lot of time getting like specific ratios and pitches and whatever out of the FM to get them where they were. I mostly just moved things around until they sounded right. with the click kind of where it was. And then they get put into a filter where I have a high pass and a low pass. So this is rather a low pass and a high pass. The low pass is in this one, and then it's going to the next filter, then a high pass. So I'm using that to kind of condition the sound to be in a certain range. Because you remember this guy, you can kind of see that there's not really full spectrum up on top there. So when I'm doing this one on the low pass, I'm making sure that I'm cutting off a certain bit on top. And then reverb. And the high frequency is just there to cut it off so that's not in the way of that guy. So the kind of the round robin feel of it, the multi-sampled feel of it being different, has to do with altering FM amounts and levels across the board. In this case, it's just 2 and 4. I don't believe I messed with the volume of anything else. Well, number 6, a tiny bit. Number 6 being that number 6 is oscillating number 5, and number 5 is oscillating number 4. So there's some the farther back that says the more impact it has. Had a little bit too much of an impact, so that's why the randomness is very far up there. Even in that small amount, it was too much. So yeah. And so that's really all there was with that. It was just like engaging the randomness and making sure random is on up top, which it is by default, but normally I turn it off because I don't like to have randomness because I want to be in control of everything. But when I'm doing this particular kind of thing, I want to have not less control, but enough control. Now, did I do volume mapping on some things? I think I might have. I totally did. Okay, so I also did velocity mapping for these toms. So that means lower, did I disengage velocity to level? Is a good question. I don't think I did. Nope, it's still totally there. Let's turn it off just so we can actually hear full level what the differences are. And then I guess we'll put back velocity levels since that's kind of what I was working with. So I'm used to it. Just to let you know that option exists. You come down here and you can go to velocity, disengage it, and then you can actually go to velocity mapping and link it to the volume for real. And really kind of do what you wanted to do. Anyway, same deal with the randomness, which was connected to the modulation input. So this is oscillator number 2, and oscillator number 4, which are both the 2 clicks I was talking about. And the mod input is how much the FM is affecting that oscillator. This particular oscillator also has a bunch of additional harmonics and stuff. Operator 4 is just a sine wave. And I'm messing around with the phase and whatever. And all of this, again, is just to ear, just doing things until they got to the point where I wanted to. And there's a lot of trial and error to get it there. What I was saying? Yeah, so then that's that with that. But it's also connected to the velocity mapping. So that at lower velocities, it's also lower FM amounts. Which is just to say that the clicks are diminished a bit. But they're not necessarily just lower volume. I'm not just lowering the volume of the clicks. Because if you did that, it would still have, like if you did it to a real sample, if you did it to a real tom, you would essentially have the sound of the full velocity hit, but quieter, which doesn't sound very realistic. So that was this attempt to make it feel realistic to there. So the bass bit is a little bit interesting. In the oscillator, I have the first harmonic engaged, so that means octave, but there's actually a harmonic in between the octave. And how did I get that? Well, what I did was I went to pitch, I went to unison index mapping, and I turned it up. This is, I think it's just straight up a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, so that's the fifth. And then I have 2 voices in unison, but every other parameter off except for volume. So there's just 2 voices now, and none of them are doing anything except for the fact that I'm going into unison index mapping and I'm telling this voice to be that high pitch. And the reason for that is because if I didn't do that, then it would be kind of perfectly clean. You can kind of see that it's really not that clean in the real versions. In fact, it also doesn't move with it, but it kind of settles in the right position. And while I have ideas about how I make it be more realistic, it would again require more than 1 Sytrus. But this is a pretty good job. Combine it with that weird basketball sound, which again is what that I deleted Superior Drummer. Why did I do that? I was gonna refer to that later, which is what the real toms sound like, perfectly close mic'd with the mic up inside the tom without the bottom head. That's what that sounds like. So that's, I mean, it's a good, as far as realism goes, it's a good starting point, because the rest of what we expect the real tom to sound like, again, has to do more with the room sound than the actual tom itself. But I just gotta do things to figure out how to do that. But this is a wonderful starting point. It's nicely compact as well. So the other guys, when I was changing pitch, not only did I change pitch of like just the bass amount, I also did things like shorten how long they are. The lower ones ring out longer, the higher ones are shorter, that kind of thing. I also changed the clicks a bit to emphasize different kind of frequency positions. Whoa. That again wasn't really based on any kind of science or whatever. I just kind of moved it around until it sounded better. Sometimes just being different was enough. Along with that, though, what I talked about the shortness of the click came into play with the other guy, because as well as having a really short click for the rest of them, the last one has, as they go lower, they have slightly longer click kind of tails. Not so long that we can hear enough, you know, the tone, but open enough that it feels a little bit more expanded, like the real one would. That guy has some fun harmonics in there. It's really kind of fun to just do that with the keyboard because of the randomness. It makes it feel like different hits. Of course, I have velocity sensitivity turned off on my keyboard, so we're getting essentially all of the maximum highest velocity hits on this. And whatever. So yeah, I feel like I've discussed this enough. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. I will have these 4 Sytrus toms available to download in the description of this video. I guess I'll just make a zip. You can download it. I mean, they are the same patch, but why make it do more work, I guess, is my feeling right now. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.